Welcome everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome to another episode of Learn with Lo. This is your first time joining in. Welcome. I am Lauryn Moore, a functional nutrition practitioner, and I'm super excited for us to join into this conversation again on our fatigue series. So we've been digging into all of it. Fatigue, the root causes of exhaustion, the reasons why you're feeling burnt out, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually burnt out, right? We really started this conversation in this series talking about how more conventional medicine tends to tackle the symptom of fatigue because, let's be real, I would say fatigue is, if not the number one, probably one of the top 3 symptoms that individuals come to me to seek medical attention in private practice. If not, like I said, the top reason, it's definitely in the top 5, right? Where we're really starting to notice, especially females, really struggling with some unrelenting fatigue or some unexplained exhaustion, or like I said, just feeling in all ways, shapes, and forms very burnt out. So we started to talk about how conventional medicine, sometimes maybe they might run some basic foundational panels. They're like, oh, let's check a thyroid, but they only really run a TSH. Or they're like, oh, let's check your iron panels, or here's a B12 shot. And we really know that the root causes of things like fatigue, exhaustion, burnout, number one, they're much more than you're going to see in like a TSH panel or even running a thyroid or even running an iron panel. We have to be thinking about, what about nutrition? What about energy coming in? What about energy leaks going out? What about those hidden areas where we are draining energy like crazy, especially from mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects, right? So if you've been with us in this series, we've talked about it all. There is not one area of this fatigue conversation that we've really left untouched. And I want to really round out this series, ideally talking to more of my fellow practitioners in the field, because I think this will help you if you are also a healthcare professional guiding patients to the root cause of fatigue. But even if you're a patient out there and you yourself are struggling with exhaustion, fatigue, and not really even no amount of sleep or coffee or doing everything right on paper is touching it, that's what I'm talking to you about, right? So this is where we can really start to think differently about how we treat that picture of fatigue, besides just accepting more of a Band-Aid or a cookie cutter approach of like, oh, let's just find some more supplements. Maybe you just need to sleep more. You need to stress less. Here's an antidepressant. Here, try some stimulants or another cup of coffee. It's like, that's not getting us any healthier, right? We have to go deeper. And today, especially for my practitioners, we're really going to dive deep into how energy production actually works and where the biggest kinks in that chain can happen, because that's usually where our patients are very exhausted, even despite their labs coming back as normal. Okay. That's a very real scenario for a lot of people. So to kind of set the stage for our conversation today, there are 3 major steps in the pathway of how the body gets energy, how it produces energy, how it absorbs energy, right? So all of those energy processes, it's not just fatigue or exhaustion or burnout or overwhelm or decision fatigue is because of like one thing. It's like, no, this is going to be the culmination of really a 3-step process. And as practitioners, it's our role to really, for each patient, evaluate this 3-step process and identify where is their kink in the chain. Is it step 1, which is energy coming in, right? How we take in energy, things like sunlight, food quality, food quantity makes a difference too. Sleep, hydration, emotions, and energetic load that we're taking in, right? So is their kink in the chain happening at step 1? Maybe their kink in the chain is happening at step 2, which is not energy coming into the system. Maybe they have pretty good food, they have pretty good circadian rhythm or sleep hygiene habits, but maybe their energy absorption is not great. This is usually how well the body is able to actually extract that energy from sunlight or extract that energy from food or extract the energy from sleep. So this is usually where we're talking about things like gut function, leaky gut, dysbiosis, like that absorption piece. That could be a very real kink in their chain. Or maybe the reason why they're feeling fatigued, exhausted, burnt out isn't because of energy coming in or energy absorption, but maybe the third part or the kink in the chain is what we call energy processing. And it is how efficient the body is at converting and utilizing this food and sunlight energy. How do we actually convert it and process it into usable cellular energy? Okay. And that's where we talk about things like mitochondria, thyroid function, nervous system regulation, hormone balance, emotional processing too, right? So as practitioners, it's really important for us to understand that 3-step process. Now, this is just part of the low down method system to teaching you this 3-step process, and identify not only the 3-step process and understand it for ourselves, but also be able to communicate with each individual patient. Where is the breakdown happening? Where is the kink in the chain? Because that then helps us target the right treatments and the right intervention strategies for somebody, instead of just hitting everybody up with the same cookie cutter plan and same cookie cutter supplements and same treatment. It's like, no, not everybody that walks in with fatigue needs a thyroid medication. Like, that is not everybody that walks in with fatigue needs an iron supplement. Not everybody that walks in with fatigue needs a B12 shot or an antidepressant. It's like, what are these cookie cutter approaches? We've got to ditch that mindset to healthcare, because it's not doing anybody it's doing everybody a disservice. It's not doing anybody a service, because then if that supplement or that treatment didn't work for somebody, they internalize that. The patient internalizes that as like, my body must be broken, right? Because that didn't work for me, so therefore I must be broken. It's like, no. The treatment just isn't the right treatment for you, because that provider didn't necessarily know how to evaluate all 3 steps in this energy processing department, right? So we really need to break each one of these down a little bit, and that's what we're going to do today, so that we can explore how to present this to patients, but also really kind of have some high-level clinical strategies and the best functional testing that we can use in practice to really bring this to life, okay? So let's dive in and dig in even more to this 3-step process, okay? Because the high-level understanding of this for my fellow practitioners out there is to understand how to better serve and how to better help individuals that are coming to you with extreme fatigue, unrelenting exhaustion, feeling burnt out, unmotivated, overwhelmed, completely just like decision fatigue out the window, right? And so when you have those individuals that are coming to you, we have to really think about this from a holistic approach. It's not, like I said, going to be a one-size-fits-all strategy. So number 1, first step in the process, you have to start here, okay? A lot of people want to think like, ooh, energy, fatigue issues, like maybe it's the gut, maybe it's the hormones, I bet it's the nervous system. It's like, yeah, all of those could be potential, but we can't skip to steps 2 or 3. We have to start with step 1. Step 1 is evaluating energy in. Okay, if the energy's not coming in, then who cares about step 2 or step 3? We have to have the right energy coming in. So how are your patients taking in or not taking in the appropriate amounts and types of energy? So even before we get into, like I said, deeper cellular metabolism, we have to ask, like, is this patient getting enough raw materials to even find fuel in their system? Because if the raw materials aren't there, like, step 2 and step 3 can just be gone, right? We have to start with step 1, even though it might seem foundational, even though it might seem basic, even if it might not seem sexy on paper. This is how we get great clinical results. So step 1, energy in. Number 1, sunlight. Okay, we've talked about this before when we talked about more of the functional nutrition side of energy production for people. And we have to think about the fact that we get energy from sunlight. We get energy from soil in which our food grows in, right? And so sunlight, circadian rhythm, how light exposure impacts our hormones is something that is drastically overlooked by most practitioners, even in the functional wellness space, especially in the conventional wellness space. Like, nobody is talking about how much sunlight are you getting, how much time you're spending outside, are you getting outside first thing in the morning? Like, that light therapy is something very overlooked. So sunlight and circadian rhythm is absolutely going to impact things like cortisol, mitochondria, melatonin. And so the first tip that we definitely want to give our patients here, if you have a patient struggling with fatigue and exhaustion, encourage them to get morning sunlight exposure for at least 10 minutes in the morning without sunglasses on. So maybe they're eating their breakfast outside. Maybe they're enjoying their cup of coffee or tea outside. Maybe they're taking the dog for a little walk around the block. Like, get sunlight on your eyes and the skin. If you have an individual that you're kind of wondering about their overall circadian rhythm alignment, things like Dutch testing can be really helpful here to really identify any dysfunctions in their overall circadian rhythm or adrenal function. So in step number 1, sunlight, circadian rhythm, gotta have it. Step number 2 of energy in is our food. Okay, so food quality, yes, but also food quantity. Okay, we've talked about this a little bit in one of our previous episodes too, where I think a lot of times I'll see, especially my female population, they'll come in and they're like, oh, I'm just so exhausted. I'm just burnt out. I am just dragging. And I look at their food logs and they're eating like the amount for a toddler, right? Their breakfast is like a cup of coffee and maybe like a granola bar. Their lunch is like some celery sticks and some chicken, and a snack is like a couple apple slices and goldfish off of their kids' plate. I'm like, well, yeah, energy is low. Like, there's not enough energy coming in. So getting the right, like, fueling quantity, but also then the fueling quality as well too, because like we said, the more plants that we eat, the more we absorb that cellular energy from the sun and from the soil as well too. So under eating, restrictive dieting, poor macronutrient balance, like, we're going to just create this overall metabolic chaos of not being able to have enough energy, raw materials on board. So making sure that we're helping our patients really, like I said, prioritize those plants in their diet, those things that are absorbing soil energy and absorbing sunshine energy. If we have any curiosities about this, obviously we can dig into nutrient evaluations for our patients. But I think a really good test is things even like fasting insulin, blood sugar markers like hemoglobin A1C, fasting glucose, or even like CGMs and glucose monitoring. All of those can be very, very helpful to evaluate, is there appropriate energy coming in to stabilize blood sugar. And then, of course, when we think about energy coming in, we think about things like hydration, electrolytes, dehydration. You're going to see decreased oxygen transportation, sluggish mitochondria, lots of fatigue. So helping people use things like electrolytes, unsweetened electrolytes, maybe element packets, maybe Relight, maybe some Celtic sea salt in their water. That can be very, very helpful. And really looking at making sure that their electrolytes are optimized as well too. So energy coming in has to be a big one, right? That is step 1 of treating someone with more of a chronic fatigue, chronic exhaustion, burnout picture. We have to evaluate energy coming in. The last piece I'll touch on here with step 1 of energy coming in is also emotions coming in. Okay, this gets a little bit outside the physical body, but we have to think about chronic stress, trauma, dysregulated emotions, somebody that is living in a very low vibrational energy state. Maybe their baseline energy is a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety. Like, if that is their baseline emotional state on any given day, they are depleting their energy before it even has an opportunity to reach their cells. Okay, so tracking for patients or helping them track things like heart rate variability, HRV on some of their wearable devices can really help them put 2 and 2 together with where their nervous system resilience is at right now. And I love like a Whoop, an Oura Ring, a Garmin, any of those types of things can be really, really helpful. And then obviously, like we said, too, Dutch testing to really look at their overall adrenal profile. All of those things can be very helpful tools for us to really evaluate the emotional state of the energy that is coming in from an emotional standpoint too. If they're always living in a very low vibration, low energy state, then of course we're going to get low energy out of that. Okay. So step 1, we have to evaluate what energy is coming in from food, from sunlight, from hydration, from also emotions that are coming in. Because if we can evaluate step 1 and kind of check off a lot of those boxes for the patient, then we can move on to step 2. Step 2 of where individuals might find a kink in their chain when it comes to energy is energy absorption. So we evaluated first energy in. Now we can evaluate, okay, is my patient actually absorbing the energy that they're consuming? If your gut is not consuming nutrients properly, you could have all of the perfect diet, the perfect foods, the perfect supplements, the perfect meal timing coming in, and it's not going to make a lick of difference. Okay. So that's why you have to start with the right energy in first. Then we can start talking about things like, does this person have leaky gut? Does this person have dysbiosis? If there's chronic gut inflammation going on, that's going to lead to nutrient malabsorption, and that is going to lead to downstream impacts like mitochondrial dysfunction and low energy, low fatigue. So patients that are experiencing your brain fog and your bloating, feeling more tired after they eat, may have an undiagnosed gut issue, and we may need to dig in a little bit more with something like GI map testing for dysbiosis, really looking at their overall balance of good guys to bad guys in the gut can be really helpful. We may also need to evaluate for their stomach acid or their digestive enzyme efficiency as well. Low stomach acid means that we're not breaking down our nutrients properly, which means that we'll probably be protein deficient, vitamin deficient, nutrient deficient. So patients that experience things like acid reflux, bloating, undigested food in their stool, like they may need some digestive enzyme support. Again, that's where we might need to kind of take a look at a GI map test or some of those types of things to really evaluate like the state of the microbiome, the balance of the good guys to the bad guys. When this beautiful food and supplements are going into the system, are we even digesting and absorbing these nutrients? So yes, we need stomach acid. Yes, we need proper bile flow. We need proper digestive enzymes. We need proper balance of good guys to bad guys. We can't have a leaky gut situation. Like all of those things are really going to impact this step 2 or this nutrient absorption step. So I would say between step 1 being a really, really big one, we've got to talk about evaluating the energy, like raw materials that are coming in first. Step number 2 is usually a very common place where people are getting hung up as well too. Okay, so start with step 1, then we can always do some other investigative work of like, okay, now that we can kind of guarantee that the right energy and raw materials are coming into the system, now we need to do that next layer digging of like what's happening once the food gets into the system. Is it even getting broken down? Is our body able to access it, or is it still in these big undigested food chunks that then get into the lower parts of the body? They can't get absorbed. They're too big to cross through that intestinal permeable lining. Okay, so thinking about nutrient absorption, energy absorption is a huge one that's going to increase the risk of nutrient deficiencies, protein deficiencies, and just overall inflammation in the body as well too. So step 1, the first place that there could be a kink in the chain for your chronic fatigue individuals could be energy coming in. Step number 2 could be energy absorption. Great things coming in, not getting absorbed super well. So that's where our stumbling block is. Sometimes step 1 looks great, step 2 looks great, and step 3 is where we're getting a hang up. And step 3 is what we call energy processing. So energy processing is where our body actually has to take that food and sunshine energy, those photons energy, our body has to actually take that and convert it into a type of energy that our cells actually recognize. So ironically enough, even though we eat protein and our body turns it into amino acids, or we eat carbohydrates and our body turns it into glucose molecules, or we eat fatty acids, or we eat fats and our body turns it into fatty acids, amino acids, fatty acids, and glucose, our cells can't use that, right? Our cells want what's called ATP. So it's like, okay, how do I take amino acids, fatty acids, and glucose? Who's going to turn that into usable cellular energy for me? And that's usually what happens inside the cells, and even more specifically inside the mitochondria of the cells. So if you kind of hear this buzzword around mitochondria, it's really just because mitochondria are where our body produces cellular energy. So Maybe we have a great amount of energy in the raw materials coming in. Maybe we're absorbing it just fine, but at the level of our cells, maybe there's so much oxidative stress that our mitochondria can't function properly. And so we're not able to produce that actual usable ATP energy. So even if there's enough energy coming in and the body's absorbing it well, cellular dysfunction can absolutely block energy production. So if your mitochondria aren't producing ATP effectively, you're going to get a lot of fatigue. And sometimes this can happen with individuals that after exercise, they're not more energized by exercise. They're actually more depleted by exercise. Sometimes we call this post-exertional malaise in terms of scientific literature, or muscle weakness. That's where we kind of really start to think about the mitochondria here. You could, depending on what your level of training is as a practitioner, you could look a little deeper at the health of the mitochondria via something called the organic acids test, or an OAT test. Really looks at things like CoQ10, magnesium, B vitamins, how our body is taking amino acids, fatty acids, and glucose and able to turn it into energy, or are we getting a kink in the chain there? Sometimes too, mitochondrial dysfunction can also kind of mask or also show up as thyroid dysfunction too. So the missing link sometimes for individuals, like we talked about with fatigue, is a thyroid picture, but often we're not just running just a TSH, right? If we really want to evaluate someone for thyroid issues, we want to draw things like a free T4, a free T3, ideally even a reverse T3, and thyroid antibodies as well too. So that to me is like a full thyroid panel. We're going to not just see TSH, which, let's be real, that's just what's happening at the level of the brain. So that's just the brain talking to the thyroid. Honestly, a TSH value is kind of useless to us because we're not really able to see, is there a thyroid conversion issue? Is there a thyroid reverse T3 issue? Is there an autoimmune issue going on? So it leaves a lot up for interpretation. So I do think that the thyroid and the fatigue picture can be true, but this is like step 3. So we're not even really talking about this until we ensure, is the raw materials coming in? Are the raw materials getting absorbed? And then step 3 is energy processing, right? Where we look at things like the mitochondria. We might look at drawing a full comprehensive thyroid panel. We might take a deeper look at things like hormone imbalances. And what about estrogen and testosterone deficiencies? Can those impact fatigue? Absolutely they can. But also everything that we talked about before, energy coming in, energy processing through the gut, that alone can sometimes self-correct some of the hormonal imbalance picture. So that's why I say this is all step 3 type of stuff. I wouldn't have somebody who's like, oh, chronic fatigue, chronic exhaustion, burnout, and immediately I'm skipping to thyroid, and I'm not even asking about food and sunlight and circadian rhythm and cortisol or gut health. It's of course we're going to talk about those things first because that's how the body works, right? A very specific order of operations. And that's why people aren't getting success. And that's why people aren't seeing results with conventional medicine, is because they don't understand how to go in the right order of operations. And so if we skip ahead and we just want to take mitochondrial supplements because I heard it was trendy and cool, or I want to take something for my thyroid because someone told me it's off, or I'm going to go over here and tinker with my hormones, I'm like, good luck. Have fun. Skipping to that, you're going to be spinning your wheels and probably not feeling a huge return on investment because you're not understanding how to support that in the right order of operations. So yes, very much yes. Thyroid, mitochondria, sex hormone imbalance, those can definitely play into the fatigue picture, but this is step 3. So we've got to tackle energy raw materials coming in. Then we can talk about energy actual absorption before we even have the opportunity to evaluate if the kink in the chain is actually step 3, energy processing. Okay. And then of course, when you think of energy processing, it does get into the deeper mental and emotional stuff as well too, because our body does have to energetically process all emotions. So a lot of times individuals that are struggling with chronic burnout, unexplained fatigue, sometimes we do even need some deeper retraining of the nervous system, maybe some somatic work, some breath work, some trauma therapy, EMDR therapy, or there's DNRS therapy, dynamic neural retraining systems. So there's lots of different situations where sometimes our nervous system controlled by the limbic system of the brain, sometimes that gets stuck in fight or flight. And if we don't recognize that, then that can also be an Achilles heel to someone being able to recover from chronic burnout or chronic fatigue as well too. So that's where at the lowdown, we're talking the physical body, yes, but you're not going to separate out the mental, energetic, and emotional body from that as well too. We can treat it all simultaneously together, right? And that's usually where people get the most success with more of that holistic approach. So if you are a practitioner provider, you're in the healthcare field, or even if you're just a curious patient of why have I not been able to see success recovering from my chronic fatigue, finding answers for my excessive exhaustion, finding motivation for my unrelenting burnout, it's probably because somewhere along the way we have a kink in the chain of this 3-step process that our body uses to produce adequate energy for us. Energy coming in, energy being absorbed, and energy being processed. So it's our role as practitioners and providers in more of a functional space to identify where that kink is and then dive in and really help to resolve that kink and let that be a positive domino effect to the whole entire chain of events that is someone's metabolic health. So if this was helpful for you, be sure to follow along. I have lots more practitioner pods coming up. You can also visit my website and check out my mentorship program there as well too, where I take on a select number of practitioners and teach them the lowdown methods and systems so that you can add this to your toolbox and practice being way more confident working with a complexity of different patients. If you're a patient out there and you're just curious of getting connected to some of these lowdown healing methods for yourself, you can always go to the link in my bio that will take you to my website where you can schedule us a functional wellness consult and we can dive into together too. So hopefully you enjoyed this fatigue series. Make sure you catch up on any of the 4 episodes in the Reels section of my profile if you missed any, and we'll be back for more next Monday.